Hey, what's up, everybody in YouTube world? This is Barnon11970, and as always, I thank you guys for watching my videos. We've been putting out some very important videos lately, and I want to continue to keep getting the message out. Before I start, I just wanted to do a little shout out to Matthew Seth. He's a 19-year-old son of Vincent, and he started watching my videos lately, and I just wanted to say thank you and know that a 19-year-old kid, instead of listening to, the twerking people of the world and the Justin Biebers of the world and all that other nonsense that makes you not intelligent, we'll put it that way, he's decided to go this route. So hopefully you'll be a voice for your generation. So I thank you. All right, guys, I want to get a little bit more into the Admiralty Law and how it works with the birth certificate. Because if you watch that video, the 49-minute video that I made, and I really hope you do if you haven't, and watching it in its entirety, once you start learning things, you start seeing things more phonetically. Now, what does that mean? Like, for example, if I was to say to you that you're a dirty rat, now, you don't take that literally, because I'm not saying you're not a human, that you're actually an animal called a rat and you're unclean. No. You know, when I say, oh, if I said to somebody they're a dirty rat, that probably means they're a snitch, for example. Now, just imagine if I wrote down, I was describing a person in a book, and I wrote the words that he's a dirty rat, and then it got buried in the sand for a couple of thousand years. The English language disappears or is not the same. And then all of a sudden somebody uncovers that book and they're reading about this individual, and according to that word, they decipher it as, well, he's a dirty rat. Now, they might take that literally. They wouldn't know that a couple of thousand years ago, the phrase you dirty rat meant you're a snitch. So if they were just deciphering it literally, they would take it as, well, they must be talking about some humanoid that was maybe breeding with a rat or a rat god or something like that. That's where people have to understand language cannot always be taken literally, because it could be in different ways that they have meanings. Like the difference between father and father. Well, something could be farther away, or it could be my father. So there are words that may sound the same, or even look the same, but have different meanings, or even slang. How's it hanging, for example? I don't mean literally something, how is it hanging? It's slang for how's it going. But thousands of years from now, if the English language is something where they're just rediscovering it, they're not going to know what that means. So we have to understand the correlations in what words mean. So we're going to get a little bit more into the birth certificate from the terminology. Now, like I said in the video, it all comes down to the fact that in Admiralty law, when a product is going from one country to another, it was primarily done by a ship. So they had to create laws. Now, let's say, for example, China brings something to the Americas, and let's say they go to the coast of California. They create what's called a birth certificate. Now, it's not birth like you think. It's not B-I-R-T-H. It was called a birth certificate, B-E-R-T-H. So instead of an I, they had E. So what is a berth? Well, if you look up the term berth, it is a shelf-like sleeping place on a ship, airplane, or railroad car. So that's where that term came into play. So when a product came from one country to another, they had to register it. They had to give it a specific registration number. They had to give it a certificate of birth. So it wrote down the name of the product, where its country of origin was, where it's going, registration number, and it was signed and authorized. Now, when you're born, and you're born off of that figurative ship, now this is meant to be figurative. It's not meant to be literal. You're not on a boat and all of a sudden you come out of your mother's womb on a ship. No, they're talking in phonetics. They're talking about not literally, but figuratively. Like, I'm on cloud 9. That doesn't mean I'm standing on some cloud that's numbered 9. It means something different. But if you see these terminologies, you'll see where this does come into effect. Because when you when people take control of you as the corporation, well, you're capital to them. Now, if you think about it, capital, who's the leader of a ship? Captain. So I'm showing you these things that you'll say it's far-fetched, but you'll see after a while it makes more sense. So you have, when you go to a court, you approach a bench. Well, another name, one of the names for a bench is actually, it means bank. So where else do you find banks? Well, if you go to a river and you go to the edge of a river, where are you? You're at a river bank. Again, it goes back to water. Now, what does a river do? It flows and it has a current. Well, what do we call another name for money? A currency. Now, if you ever heard of the flow of cash or a cash flow, again, the currency or current flows, currency flow or cash flow. Even the term merchant comes from the word mer, which means basically for the sea or water. And that's why we have merchant bankers. So these things are all into play, because if you don't study things, it's going to sound crazy, because you're going to say things like, oh, when I'm born, I'm coming off a ship. No, it's not meant to be literally. The vessel that you're coming in from is your mother's womb, which is surrounded by your placenta, which is attached to your umbilical cord, which is attached to the navel. Again, what is the military of the sea? The Navy. I'm not saying they're exactly the same thing, but if you see it in a fanatical form, in the fanatics, and take it as allegories, you're seeing that it's hidden in plain sight with wordplay. So when you are born, you are coming out of the vessel. You are made of mostly water. You're coming out of water. So it is saying that you are coming from water, docking on dry land. And again, when a ship goes to port, what does it do? It docks. Who is there to help you get the baby out of the womb? Well, it's the doctor, or AKA doc. So these things are not coincidence. And I know when people say things like, well, how does this apply? Because, admiralty law is supposed to be law of the water, and I'm on dry land. Well, again, they get you by not knowing what's going on. And I'll give you an exact reason of how they get away with it. You ever see the Washington Monument? If you've never been there, or if you've never seen a picture of it, I want you to Google it. And you'll see in about 2 or 3 feet mark, there is a brass bar that goes around it. And no one ever knew what that meant. What that means, again, not literally, but figuratively, they're using that as a marker for the water line. Now, that doesn't mean there has to be water there. They're talking figuratively, which means anything below that line is technically in water. Now, how can we get away with literal things in the physical realm? Well, you can be in 2 countries at the same time. Like, for example, if, let's say, you visit England and you're in the country of the United Kingdom. Well, if you go to a U.S. embassy, you are no longer in England or Great Britain. You are in the United States of America. Technically, you're in the United States, which is a corporation, but you are not literally in the Americas, but because the U.S. embassy is considered United States property, you are technically in 2 countries at once. So it doesn't literally mean that as soon as you walk into an embassy, all of a sudden you're transported magically into the country. It's just part of that country. So people need to understand that the way we've been programmed is to think of everything literally. And that's how they entrap you, because they could put these things right in front of you and you're not aware of it. So I'm going to keep this video relatively short, because I want people to focus on the fact that whether you believe in it or not, this is all based on admiralty law and law of the sea. It is based on the fact that you are a piece of property that was leaving a boat, not a literal boat, a figurative boat, from water, docking onto land. And when you leave the placenta behind, it leaves your DNA, which is the evidence of proving who you are. Now, you don't know anything about this, so no one stops and thinks, oh, well, I just gave birth to my kid, let's take home the placenta. You're not taught that, so you just discard it. Well, like they say, one man's junk is another man's treasure. So they take that DNA evidence and they wait for you to claim it. But since you didn't know about this, and since they don't teach you about this, they ultimately take it and say, okay, this person must be dead, lost at sea, because they did not claim what they have as rightfully theirs. So it's considered abandoned. Now we're claiming it. And since no one is disputing it, in law, if you make a claim that no one challenges, it is the same as people agreeing. It's consent through silence. And what they do is they create a dummy corporation with your name as the title. And it's on a certificate. A certificate is ownership. Plain and simple. That's why when you register a car, you get a title. When you buy it outright, it shows a title, you own it. It's a certificate of title. It is ownership. So people need to understand this. And I want people to say, know that I'm not just guessing names. Here is a Black Law Dictionary, 4th edition. I recommend 4th or 5th edition because pretty much after that, they basically are trying to cover their tracks by taking out certain words and rewriting it. So you'll never really know the newer edition, the newer definitions, because they're trying to keep you from learning this stuff. Because once it gets out, the more people know, the more it gets exposed. So 4th or 5th edition is what I recommend. But you'll start reading about definitions that totally change the way things are. So when you go from a certificate of live birth when you're born and your parents sign it not knowing what they're doing. So the government's actually committing fraud by not giving full disclosure of what they're signing. Because I'll tell you this much, if your parents knew before they signed that certificate of live birth, if the doctor said, well, before you sign this, I just want to let you know that you're going to leave behind your DNA evidence. The government is going to claim that as their own because you don't claim it yourself and it's considered abandoned. And what they're going to do is, let's assume the kid's name is John Smith. They're going to take the name John Smith and use it as a corporation, send you back a birth certificate that you think is actually you, but is nothing more than a receipt for a dummy corporation, which we're going to profit off of, trade and sell throughout his lifetime, which will allow him to become basically a slave of our system. Do you think they would sign it? So there is fraud being committed. But since no one is challenging it, that's how they get away with it. So knowledge is power, and that's why I ask people either make your own videos or just as simple as sharing mine. Now, I haven't gotten a lot of people doing this, but I had a couple of emails saying, oh, your 49-minute video, I can't watch it, it's too long. I want you to think about how spoiled we are at this point. Just imagine 100 years ago, somebody, first of all, trying to learn this getting this information at all. Where are they going to get it from? But let's say somebody just happens to be near somebody that talks about this stuff. And they decide, all right, this person's not crazy, I'm going to research it. Just imagine if you're on a horse and buggy where the nearest town is a couple of miles away, and you're trying to find information on this, and you're going from one library in one town, then you have to travel to some other town to get something else, and then try and convince other people about it. How are you traveling? So we're getting a little spoiled when somebody says, I don't have time to sit and watch 49 minutes of the most helpful information I will learn about why I am being forced into paying taxes, mortgages, having all these rules that I may not agree with happen to me, where I can be punished for driving over 55 miles an hour, even though I haven't hurt anyone. I can be thrown in jail, but I'll stand in line for the next movie, or I'll spend an hour watching the MTV Music Awards because somebody's twerking. I mean, really, people, are we that spoiled? And when I ask people to do something, the minimum thing I'm asking you to do is watch the video and learn it, and then hit a button called share. You don't have to get out of your house. You don't have to get into your car. I mean, just imagine just 25 years ago, this stuff, how improbable it would be to get this information out. The internet is allowing us to get information that we could never get before and give it to people around the world instantly. Let's take advantage of that. Let's not prove these upper people, the elites out there, let's not prove them right when they say we're just a bunch of lazy, land lovers, or, like mouth feeders, or whatever they call us, mouth breeders, or whatever they call us. They definitely call us zombies, because technically, when you're dead at sea, even though I'm not physically dead, because I didn't claim my DNA, They own me. They own the rights to me because they have the proof that I exist, and they made a corporation out of me called Chris and my last name. So we have to understand this stuff. And I know other people had some good questions about the fact, well, they didn't have DNA 100 years ago. Well, number one, we don't know that because I actually have been researching not the literal sense of the Bible, but the allegories of the Bible. Because if you know about the Bible, it's all about allegories. It's a story. It's basically trying to have hidden coded messages so they wouldn't get killed. Because people know, as you see throughout history, when people try and talk about information, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, JFK, Abraham Lincoln. When people start talking about stuff, they tend to be having a lone gunman just want to shoot them for no reason. John Lennon, all these people. So they knew that if they talked about this stuff and got caught, they would be executed. So what's the best way to do it? Tell it in allegory stories so only the smart people can decipher what it means. But if you research the Bible the way I do, and these people have been doing, and I've been researching from them, the best one I would recommend, his name is Bill Donahue. He's been doing this since the 80s. Um, he's proven that they knew the number of the speed of light, that they knew the circumference of the earth. They knew about Adam and Eve was an allegory for the splitting of the atom, because life begins when you have a sperm with an egg, starts out as a single cell, and then it splits. So they knew back then that the atom was nothing more than the life was nothing more than the splitting of an atom. So they just had to do it as a story. So what better way to describe an atom by calling it atom? So either one, they knew about it and they just didn't tell us, or two, it's irrelevant because 100 years ago no one knew about this stuff. So you can't argue what you don't know about. I mean, look how many few people know about this now, and look how far we've come technologically, where you can get information in an instant. Let's not be spoiled here. So I want you people to give it a thumbs up, to share it, post it on Facebook, do what I've been doing. I've been going on Facebook and going to MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, and I've been emailing them and giving them a link to the video. If we don't do our part, then we deserve what we get. So like I said, I'm gonna keep this short. It's gonna be under 20 minutes. I know I speak a while in my videos. I know I don't do any fancy things, but to me, the message is the most important thing. So bear with it, because like I said, if you were living 100 years ago, just imagine how difficult it would be to get this information. So don't take it for granted, and don't sit there and wait for somebody else to do what you need to do to get this done. United we stand, divided we fall. Hopefully this helps you a little bit. I'll make other videos later on to describe little bits and pieces. But let's get this together. Do your part. The only part I ask is to share it. That's not a lot. Peace.